Hey guys, welcome back to this series where we are doing an Eat More to Weigh Less case study with one of my clients, Athena. So if you are new to this series, basically we are breaking down how you can actually eat more and weigh less. Today, we're going to dive into what her journey looked like before she started eating more and how she was actually gaining weight eating 1,300 calories previously. So again, if you're new here, make sure you check out parts 1 through 3. In part 1, we really broke down how Athena is doing so far in her fat loss journey and how she's losing the fat while eating more. In part 2, we talked about how we are tracking the fact that it is fat loss by using body composition scans to make sure that she's losing a larger percent of fat than muscle, with little to no muscle loss as possible. And in part 3, we talked about how we are tracking her behaviors and the consistency levels required in order to see results. So today, we're actually going to rewind it back a little bit and talk about some of the effects of dieting that a lot of people see. And we're going to hear firsthand from Athena what she was experiencing before she stumbled upon Eat More to Weigh Less 10 years ago. So a lot of times we hear people talk about how they found Eat More to Weigh Less 5, 10, 15 years ago. And it can kind of seem like, well, what happened between then and now? So over the next 2 parts, these last 2 sessions, we're really going to break down what Athena was doing in the meantime before she decided to commit to this cut journey that she's on right now. So a lot of people don't realize the effects of dieting and how undereating begins to slow down your metabolism. And oftentimes, even when you are in a diet, you are eating less than maintenance. You are not only hitting a plateau, but often people start to see things go in reverse, and that is weight gain. So we're going to go ahead and dive into this session with Athena, where she starts talking about where she was before she started it. And I'm going to butt in here and there just to emphasize key points that I think are going to be really essential for you if you are just starting out this journey, or maybe if you're wondering if the things that you're experiencing are normal and what's actually supposed to happen. So let's go ahead and hear from Athena how it all got started.
Yeah. 10 years ago, I signed up on my Fitness Pal, and I just, put my numbers in there, and it said, oh, you got to eat, 1,300 calories a day. And I'm like, okay, I'll eat my 1,300 calories, and I'm running or doing whatever. And I was gaining weight. Mm-hmm. I was like, something just is not right here,
So how long did you eat at the 1,300 calories?
I want to say, well, prior to that, I was doing Weight Watchers to try and get off the baby weight from my first and second pregnancies. And then I'm like, well, the Weight Watchers, because it's so low calorie, mm-hmm. Like you think it's okay at the time. I didn't know anything. Most people don't. I didn't realize I was under eating so bad. And then someone said, oh, try my Fitness Pal. So it was basically like the same calories without the points.
So I want to pause it right here, because something that Athena said is really, really critical to growth and leaving that diet roller coaster. And that is where she says that she was on Weight Watchers, and then someone mentioned, hey, why don't you try my Fitness Pal? And when she tried it, it was essentially giving her the same amount of calories, just without the points. That's something that a lot of people don't realize. When we're on this constant search for the perfect diet, we often don't realize that they typically have a lot of similarities. So usually the gist is that it's getting you to eat less. So a lot of times when we go on these specialty diets where something is being removed, or it's, like no carb or low carb, or you're cutting out an entire food group of some sort, you're cutting out an entire macronutrient, when those things are happening, essentially they're all doing the same thing. And that is getting really creative with helping you to eat less. And so instead of really understanding and doing a little bit of detective work to understand that, okay, this isn't a magical diet, it's just having me eat less. That's the reason why in Athena's case, when she switched from the point system to the calorie system, there wasn't really a huge change. for some people, this may not be the case. For some people, maybe if they're eating a certain amount of calories and they hit a plateau, when they switch to a point system, then suddenly they start seeing loss again. And they may not realize if they were to add up the calories of their point allotment, it is probably just slightly less calories than it was when they were counting calories. Or if they were eating points and they switch to something else where they switch to like keto or low carb or no dairy or no bread or something like that, they switch to something that removed a food group. And a lot of times we make the connection that the removal of whatever the thing was is what's causing this magical weight loss to start happening again. But typically when you weigh things out pound for pound, usually if you hit a plateau and then you move into something else and it starts working again, you can probably guarantee that you just lowered your calories in some way. For instance, if you're going keto, a bun has a lot more calories than lettuce if you're having a burger. So simply removing the bread from your meals and replacing them with something super low calorie like lettuce would cause you to have less calories. The same thing when you have foods that have like negative points or very low points. If that entices you to have a lower calorie food, then you're essentially just lowering your calories in a nutshell. So this is a really, really big thing, even though Athena just kind of said it in passing because of the fact that she's been on this journey for so long. That's something really critical when you're assessing different diet plans and why they've worked for you in the past. If you understand what it was that you were doing before and you can assess pound for pound what both had, you can typically find the underlying reason why something started working for you again, and or why it's not working for you, which in Athena's case was because it was pretty much the same right around that. I think she said 1,300 calories. So I'm gonna let her keep talking.
So I just, it was probably about 3 years of really bad under eating, like really bad. And then I think, that was in 2012. And then I found you on there. I want to say it was May. It was May of 2012. I discovered Eat More to Weigh Less via a YouTube video. I was totally intrigued.
Okay, so I'm gonna cut here again because of something else that Athena just said here, and that was that she was doing the low calories for about 3 years. That's something else that I feel like a lot of people don't recognize when they switch over to trying to do things better, more healthy, more sustainable. We have a lot less patience with doing things the right way, with healing, with doing metabolism resets and things like that than we tend to do with dieting. So for instance, in this case, she's saying that there was, she was 3 years into under eating and it was starting to go in reverse. She was starting to actually gain weight while eating less, even though, she kept switching things around and trying to figure out a new way. And what I find is that so many people get so comfortable with dieting that even when it's not working, they will stick with it for years and years and years and years. But once they discover that, okay, dieting has done this damage to my metabolism and I want to fix it, there's a lot less of that patience that shows. They kind of start out on the journey and they're like, wait a minute, why am I gaining weight? Or why am I not losing weight? Or why did my plateau magically go away and all this fat started falling off? When in the reality is that if you spent a lot of time dieting, the more time that you spent dieting, the longer your healing process may take. And you have to be just as patient, because I see a lot of people that end up making the journey take much, much longer than it needs to because of the fact that they are so mentally tied up in why aren't things moving fast enough? And then they're changing a lot of things. So something that I wanted to point out, because of the fact that she did say that, that had been going on for 3 years and she was just kind of spinning her wheels with it, but still essentially hoping that it would work at some point.
So I was like, and then I just ripped off the Band-Aid, just going to go right up to maintenance, which was like what I thought was my maintenance. Still was not my maintenance. And I put on 25 pounds. And then again, I get comments from, my mom or whoever saying, oh, this isn't working.
Oh, goodness. 2012 video. I don't even want to imagine what video you came across on YouTube. We've all grown a lot since then. I'm pretty sure I was in a corner whispering on YouTube because that's pretty much how it all started. So she's saying a mouthful in every sentence here. So I'm probably going to interrupt quite a bit, especially in this first part, because of two things that Athena just pointed out here. So one of the things that she said was, she quote unquote ripped the band-aid. And I wanted to kind of clarify a little bit what she meant about that. So in the Eat More to Weigh Less community, we call it ripping the band-aid when essentially you come into this journey and you find out, like Athena did, hey, I'm eating 1,300 calories and I should be eating whatever, 2,500. Ripping the band-aid is going straight from the 13 to the 25, which I typically don't recommend because it's not for the faint of heart. And you'll see why in Athena's comments here, is that shock to the system can cause a very rapid weight gain. And if you're not mentally prepared for that, it can make you run in the other direction and again make your healing journey take longer. So when you hear someone say rip the band-aid, that's usually what they mean, is that they went straight up to their maintenance level calories instead of slowly inching up. Now, the other thing that she says here is that she essentially reset to a calorie level that was too low. So that is something that happens very, very frequently, especially during the early stages of the metabolism reset. And so you will hear a lot of people and when we have like success stories and people sharing their journey, that they're like, you know, I'm on my third reset or something like that. And that's essentially why they're saying they're like second or third reset. It does not take 2 to 3 resets. It takes the mental capacity to understand during your very first reset, like this is one of those areas where if you wanted to shortcut your journey, then you would want to have this click sooner. And that is when you understand where your body should be burning calories at versus where it is. So say you are in Athena's case where you're at 1,300 calories and you're gaining weight. That means that at that point, her metabolism has adapted to a very, very, very low calorie amount, probably anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 if 1,300 is causing a gain, because essentially her body is looking at that as excess. So when you're dieting for a really long time, your body adapts to that lower calorie amount and starts to see it as maintenance. As soon as you eat anywhere above that, your body sees that as a surplus of calories and it starts packing on the pounds a little bit. So when you're already at that place where your body is starting to store fat, because it's like, what is happening? There's no reason for us to have muscle anymore. So it starts releasing a lot of the muscle and hoarding fat. When your body's in that state, adding more calories too quickly can cause that rapid weight gain. But because so many people are afraid of gaining weight, they reset to a lower number. They pick a calorie number that is higher than what they're eating, but not quite the number that the calculator gave them. So what happens is we see this a lot where somebody comes in and maybe they're eating like 900 calories or 1,200 calories or something like that. They go punch their numbers in the calculator and it tells them to eat like 2,000 something. And they're like, that is insane. There is no way, because I'm already gaining. I'm not going to eat that much. So they go to a lower calorie number. Maybe they say like 1,600 or 1,700, or in Athena's case, 1,900. That should be plenty. I'll just go to there and I'll reset to there. And in Athena's case, she sat there for an entire year before finally accepting, okay, I need to go up to the next number. Now, sitting there for a year isn't necessarily a bad thing. For some people, they may take a year to get up to that other calorie level on purpose because they're trying not to rip the band-aid. So they're going very, very, very slow in increasing their calories so that they get, they're gaining limited amounts of fat, but they are still working towards that ultimate high goal. But if you rip the band-aid and you get this seemingly overnight weight gain, and then you stay there, that means that not only did you do this full band-aid ripping, but you reset to too low of a number. So you gave your body that shock by adding all the calories overnight, But then when it's all said and done, you still have a higher number to go to, which means more weight gain, especially if you're going to rip the Band-Aid again. You would have been better off slowly inching up to the highest number while adding the calories in a minimal fashion so that you don't gain as much. It's just about understanding that that total calorie number is still the number that you're resetting to, so that you're not essentially doing the process all over again like so many people do. So that's something I really wanted to clarify, because when we're talking about the reset, so many people will play around with the numbers on the calculator, select an activity level that's way lower than it should be, even if they're like wearing devices like you hear Athena talk about with her Fitbit, and it's telling them pretty much the same number or higher than the number that the Eat More to Weigh Less calculator gave them, and they'll still kind of be in denial about it. These are the things that cause the journey to be slower. So it's a catch-22 mindset wise, because it's the resistance of these things that actually causes the journey to take way longer than it needs to. So I'm going to go ahead and hop back to Athena and hopefully not interrupt her as quickly this time. It was like, I had a message I wanted to shout from the rooftops, but I literally just put it in a corner.
I heard it. So
I'm so glad that you heard my whisper from the rooftop. Which was awesome. So like you're doing Weight Watchers, you find MyFitnessPal, 3 years of under eating. Luckily, I mean, you found it then versus having more years of under eating. Is that when, so did you started a reset right then when you ripped the Band-Aid? Like you went from 1300 up
well,
to
I went on like some online calculator, and I put my activity level in, I put the wrong activity level in, I put myself in as the lightly active when I was really more like moderately active. And I took my calories up to 1900, which was like, at that time, it was like astronomical, and then it took me one whole year really to realize that I still wasn't eating at maintenance. Mm-hmm. So then I upped them again, because at that point I had gotten a Fitbit and I was able to see what I'm actually burning. Right. And I was like, oh, wow, like this is crazy.
So how did it feel at the 1900? I'm sure that felt like a ton of calories.
Yes.
Did you gain a lot of weight in that first year of eating at 1900?
I want to say I gained 25 pounds eating 1900 calories a day, going from probably 1300, let's say, or whatever.
The Band-Aid. Yeah.
I just went right up to maintenance, and I was bloated. I was so bloated every day. But I was like, oh, I got to keep eating. And, I was determined. And it still wasn't maintenance. That's the crazy part.
Next year,
and then the next year, I realized what my maintenance was. So I upped it. Then I gained like another 10 pounds. So all in all, I gained like 35 pounds. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I was like, well, this is what needs to happen.
Right.
Did I like the weight gain? No, but it was like essential for everything else to take place.
Right. Exactly. So Athena just said something here that not a lot of people say, and until maybe way, way later in the game. And that is, this is just what needed to happen. There are not very many people who are going to see the weight gain that comes along with the reset process from that perspective straight out of the gate. So when we talk about why the journey takes so long for most people, it's because they hear stories like this, and this is the messy middle. They hear the stories about the person who, gained 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 30 pounds, and they're like, that's already my problem. I am already gaining weight. I don't want to gain any more weight. I did all of this work to lose the weight. There is no circumstances under which I want to gain another pound. And the part about this that is oxymoronic is that the weight gain is going to happen anyway. So you can choose to reset and have some control over the weight gain and make sure that you are hitting your macros and exercising in a way that tells your body what to do with this surplus of calories, that tells your body that, hey, I want to regain some lost muscle mass and rebuild my metabolism, or you can stay exactly where you are trying to avoid it. Because remember, the most important thing is that Athena was already gaining weight on 1,300 calories. So the weight that she gained when she added that bulk of calories just sped up what was already coming. So this is no different than when someone yo-yos, when they lose the weight and then they gain it back. But what typically happens during yo-yo dieting is that when you lose weight, you're losing muscle. So anywhere from 30% or so, muscle mass of that is being lost. So you're only losing about 60% or so fat, 30% or so is muscle, and then 10% is all of the other things that are happening in your body, your organs, your organ mass, and stuff like that. So when not if you regain fat, you go into a body fat overshoot, and the majority of what you're gaining is fat. Your body would love to gain muscle, but 9 times out of 10, we're not doing the things required to gain muscle. So even if you lose 10 pounds and gain back 10 pounds, the 10 pounds that you lost took some muscle with it. Only a little bit of fat was lost. The 10 pounds that you gained adds more fat. So you didn't replace that muscle yet. So at the beginning stages of the reset, that is what your body is doing. Your body is attempting to rebuild the things that it lost, that muscle mass, and also what we talked about with the organ and bone mass and all of that. So the gain, when she's saying this is what needed to happen, she understood the bigger picture of what happened, that dieting was tearing away at her muscle mass. It was tearing away at her bone mass. It was shrinking her organs. There was so many things going on that in order to properly heal, she had to be able to get past what the scale said in order for her body to rebuild in those areas. Because in trying to keep the weight too low, those areas cannot rebuild. You cannot see the benefits of healing when you're overly concerned about your weight. Because if gaining muscle mass is what's actually going to heal your metabolism, but you don't want to gain a pound, then you don't want to gain muscle mass. So it puts you in this nasty cycle of, I don't want to gain any weight, but you're slowly gaining it anyways, because at a certain point, it doesn't matter how low you drop your calories, your body's just still holding on to fat, holding on to fat, holding on to fat. So even if you can get the scale to move here and there, usually what it's reducing is that muscle mass, which is slowing down your metabolism, which is just digging you a deeper and deeper and deeper hole. So many people are afraid of and resist this change. But remember, if you're adding on muscle, even when you do go to lose weight again, you don't have to lose as much, because you're not trying to lose the muscle that you regain. You're not trying to lose the good stuff that you regain. You're only trying to lose fat. And it's going to look completely different because you've added the muscle. So this was something that, as Athena matured in the journey, she really understood and grasped and leaned into. Most people, when you hear that the journey took all this time, 5, 6, 7 years, you can bet that about 5 of those 6 years was spent in turmoil over trying not to gain any weight. So in that resistance, you actually make the journey take longer. I cannot stress that enough. So I really wanted to stop it right there while she was talking about that. I think Athena has a few more tips for us, and then we're going to cut it for the day. And I think that's really one of the things that I've always admired about your journey, is that, obviously you ripped the Band-Aid, and that's something that, like, I try to tell people about, like, if you rip the Band-Aid, some stuff is going to happen.
Yes.
So, and it happened, but you've always been a trooper about that, because you were just like, look, the healing needs to happen. It needs to start, like, whatever's got to happen. Let's just let it happen. So you get up to this, like, 35 pounds or whatever, and you're eating finally over 2,000. Was there anything that you noticed that happened, like, other than the weight gain? Was there any, like, signs for you that they were healing? Because at this time you weren't getting scans or anything. So was there, like, any more or less energy? I know you said, like, you were bloated. I'm sure there was, like, tons of digestion things happening, but, like, hair, nails, skin, anything like that?
The hair. Because when I was under eating, I was losing a lot of hair. And I was always cold, like constantly cold. Like everyone else was like, I was working at an office at the time. And then like everybody would be fine. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
freezing, absolutely freezing. Yeah. And the hair, I was losing a lot of hair and I stopped losing hair. And I'm like, wow. And more energy because I was eating more food, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people who experience that, like, because when they're dieting, they don't know that the things they're feeling aren't normal. They just think
Right.
it's something with them. You know what I mean? And so they start trying to fix those things. So like you're under eating, and like you said, like you're always cold. I mean, obviously you like turn up the heat or put on a sweater or just like tell everybody else they're crazy. Like, oh my gosh, why aren't you guys freezing? And people don't realize it. So I see a lot of people that when they start eating more, they're like, I didn't realize that that was why I was always cold. Or the same thing, if something has happened with if they're breaking out or their nails are brittle or hair is brittle or something like that, it's usually like they start trying to tend to that symptom versus the actual issue that's happening, versus actually understanding that, like, okay, it's because I'm not nourishing my body that these things are happening. So it kind of leads to that wild goose chase, because a lot of times that leads to a lot of elimination diets for a lot of people because they're trying to figure out what's wrong. So maybe it's because I'm eating this and I'll eat less of that and I'll eat less of that, and then the whole slippery slope. So during this time, even though you weren't, because that's the thing, is a lot of people want to know, like, how do I know that I'm healing? And obviously, if you can get a scan, that's going to be the easiest way to know, because it's going to tell you are you regaining muscle mass.
Right.
But there are other symptoms that people can get, like energy, increased temperature, body temperature. Like that shows you that your metabolism is starting to rev up again, and being able to see changes in your skin and nails and stuff like that. So all of those are all huge parts of healing. So we're gonna cut it here just because I really want to make sure that that part sinks in. So we are wrapping up our series with Athena. We only have one more session next week. So I really wanted to take the time over these 2 weeks to discuss what the journey looks like if you're on it right now. So if you're on that healing journey, some of the things that Athena talked about hair, skin, nails, energy, digestion, bloating, all of those things are 100% normal when you are on this journey. If you're a Band-Aid ripper, the digestion one will be huge in the early days. You will notice that there is a lot of issues with your body trying to digest all of that food at once. That's one of the biggest reasons why I recommend slowly increasing your calories, but always keeping your eye on the prize of what that ultimate calorie level is that you're going to. So if you are someone who's willing to be open-minded enough to start out on that journey and to realize that, okay, all of these things are parts of healing. It's not just about, the Band-Aid ripping isn't just about, let me hurry up and get to my calorie level. That's the reason why going slow can sometimes be preferred, because there's so much mentally that needs to happen while you are healing. You need to be accepting the fact that there's stuff that's going on beneath the surface that you're not aware of. If you're getting scans, you can be more aware of them, but pay attention to all of the other signs that are happening. If you are somebody who's always been sluggish, that's something that you want to look for as a sign that your metabolism is healing when you start getting more energy. If you are experiencing a lot of hair loss, nail brittleness, skin changes, a lot of those things are all going to be signs of your healing process. It's not just about, okay, I've gained enough weight, let me cut now. Because if everything inside hasn't healed yet, your body is not going to react appropriately, which means the way that you want it to, when you go to cut again. So I just really want to emphasize, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more next week, that Athena's 10-year journey to her 25-pound cut had very little to do with the fact that it takes 10 years to get a result. It had more to do with the inner work, the mental work that she did along the way. And we'll talk a little bit more in our last session next week about what she was doing in between time, because she essentially at one point did not want to cut anymore. So it's very important to understand that if you're somebody who's on this journey, to not get sidetracked or discouraged by thinking like, oh my gosh, it's going to take me 10 years, because it will not. the things that we are sharing with you in this series will help you to get there faster. For most people, they can go through this process within 1 to 3 years and be on their merry way. But for those that come in and are expecting a like 90-day, I'm going to reset my metabolism and lose all of my fat type journey, that is just very unrealistic. And that is because of the diets and things that you have been on in the past. So this is not a journey for the faint of heart. It's not something that I would venture into unless you truly want the end result. And that is a healed metabolism and a body that reacts the way that it's supposed to when you actually eat below maintenance level. So it can seem like it's not that big of a deal, but for somebody who was gaining weight on 1,300 calories to be successfully losing weight, eating 700 more than that, I would say that that is a huge, huge success. So, you know, a lot of things have happened in between that. And hopefully you'll join us next week as we wrap up this session and talk about some of the things that you want to focus on while you're healing, instead of just staring at the scale and wondering, can I cut now? Can I cut now? Can I cut now? Hopefully you guys are enjoying this series. I can't wait to share more with you next week. If you have any questions about your metabolism reset journey, or if you're wondering if you're ready to cut yet, go ahead and drop me a comment below and I'll be more than happy to answer that for you. So thank you guys for joining, and I will see you next week.